Welcome to the Transform with MG podcast, where we'll talk all things transforming your body, health, and mindset. So, today I'm just going to dive straight into the questions. There's a lot to answer and a lot of really good ones, which I am really excited to go through. So, without further ado, let's dive into the first question. I'm on more calories than ever and I'm losing weight. I'm a little baffled. Could you explain? I get this quite a lot from the girls that I'm working with when they initially come to me with the goal of losing weight or body fat. I usually ask them how many calories they're on if they know the answer. And it's not uncommon that I get an answer of I'm eating 1200 calories, 1000 calories, or even less. So when I go and give them targets of 1800, 2000 and plus, they're a little confused because they're asking themselves, if I can't lose weight on 1200 calories, what makes you think that I'm going to be able to lose weight eating 800 calories more? But the thing is that if you were eating 1000 or 1200 calories, then you probably should be losing weight. But here's the thing. You are more than likely not actually consuming 1000 or 1200 calories. And I'm not saying that you're lying about your intake, but you might unconsciously be eating more than you're actually tracking. You might be tracking in MyFitnessPal or whatever calorie tracking app you're using 1200, but then you're also having snacks or liquid calories that you're forgetting to add into the app. Another thing that might be happening is that you have such an aggressive calorie target, which is unsustainable. So you might be able to stick to this target Monday to Friday, and at the weekends you completely go off track or end up overeating or binging, which you don't account for. Another thing might be that you are able to actually stick to it for a week or two, but again, because it's super restrictive, you don't actually stick to that number consistently across a few weeks. So if you're saying you're eating super low calories, is it that your target is super low, or are you actually eating that much and have been eating that much for a substantial amount of time? Because if that's the case, you aren't likely consuming that amount and you're unaware of how much you are actually consuming. The goal with fat loss isn't to eat as little as possible, is to actually eat as much as you can while still losing weight. I will always put my clients on the highest calories possible while still being able to drop body fat. What that does, it means that they can actually stay adherent to their diet, not feel super restrictive, and not actually feel like they're on a diet. Yes, it may take a little bit longer, but in turn, we're prioritizing their wellness as well. What happens when you go into a too aggressive fat loss phase and you're trying to lose as much as possible in the shortest amount of time is that there is a diminishing point of returns and you're compromising your energy levels, your strength and performance in the gym, your mood, and you can also risk losing your period as not fueling yourself properly also has a negative impact on our female hormones. So two of them don't really go hand in hand. So to answer your question, the reason why you're still being able to lose weight eating the most you ever have been is because you're actually able to be consistent with the calories that you have. You're still in a deficit, hence you're losing that body fat, but you're in a sustainable deficit and you don't actually feel like you're super restricting yourself. You don't feel the need to overeat or binge because the amount of food that you are consuming is fueling your everyday tasks. Second question, how to help yourself feel better when you get into a bad headspace? So although this doesn't directly relate to a nutrition or exercise question, on this podcast, we go beyond surface level, and I truly believe that our biggest asset is our mindset. And when you work on that first and foremost, your health and fitness journey will be 100 times successful, and you're going to actually find sticking to a diet, sticking to an exercise regime a lot easier because you're going to have your mindset aligned with the goals that you want. So we often magnify situations in our head, and our thoughts are not reality, and we often have to pull ourselves out of a situation and think about it logically. Why are we feeling the way we are feeling? What has helped me a lot to get out of a negative headspace is writing things out. This doesn't have to be professional in any shape or form. It doesn't even have to make sense to anyone. It doesn't have to be organized or structured in any way, shape, or form. But the simple task of getting your thoughts on a piece of paper helps you declutter what's inside of your head. I'm sure there's science behind why that works. I haven't looked into it, to be honest, so I don't know, but I know for me that when everything is in my head, my emotions of anxiety and overwhelm blur the picture for me in order for me to think clearly and rationally. So dumping everything down on paper just clears my head and allows me to think of solutions and actions in order to snap myself out of that negative mindset. Another thing that I will write outside of just like word vomiting on the page is things that I am grateful for. And I know that when you are in a negative or a bad headspace, it can be hard to think of the things that you are grateful for, because what's going through your head is, why is this happening to me? Why am I in this situation? But you can be grateful for really simple things in life, such as being able to get out of bed, having a roof to sleep under, having a warm bed, having clean drinking water and access to food. And even starting off by writing 3 or 4 things down that you are grateful for instantly shifts your perspective from negative to a positive, and you start to appreciate your life and things that are going on. So yes, your problem does matter, no matter how little they are in comparison to somebody else's, but it's putting those problems into perspective of how lucky you are to have the things that you do have. So it could be something as simple as I mentioned, but it constantly uplifts your mood, and it's a first step to like snapping out of that bad headspace. And lastly, what I like to do is plan. Again, it just gives me some more clarity, because when I have a shitloads things to do, they're all stuck in my head, I get this sense of overwhelm, and that feeling of overwhelm often prevents me from taking any action at all. I am so stressed that I end up doing nothing. Whereas making a to-do list, it could be a big long ass to-do list sometimes because there's so much that needs to get done, but writing everything down again in just like any order of importance, and then prioritizing what is urgent and what is important. I use Google Calendar to then schedule everything out across the week. Instantly, I'm already freeing up so much time, because I'm realizing that everything that I think I need to get done doesn't need to get done in one day, and I can spread it out across a week, maybe even across a month. So that just helps me to clear my head, get some direction, remind myself on what is actually important. So these are the 3 things that I personally use to get out of a bad headspace, negative headspace. So writing everything down, it allows me to think logically and rationally about my thoughts, because like I said, our thoughts are not reality, or feelings are not facts. So it's just like it allows you to question them. Then doing some gratitude, as that creates a positive outlook on life and rewires the negative to a positive. And then lastly, planning, scheduling, and just organizing what's in my head in front of me, so that I have like a clear direction on what my next step is. Our next question: being intimidated in the gym. Okay, so this isn't a question, but I'm assuming this client just wants me to go into more depth and detail on how to overcome intimidation in the gym. And I get that the gym can feel like an intimidating place. You walk in, there's equipment that you've never seen before. You've no idea how to use it. There's people that look like they know exactly what they're doing and they have been doing it for years. You're afraid that if you try something new, you're going to look silly. You're afraid that people are going to judge you for the way you're performing exercises. You might feel that people in the gym already are in great shape and you feel insecure about yourself. I get it. All those feelings are totally valid, and I get where the gym intimidation comes from. I was in that position myself. I thought the gym was a scary place. To be honest, there was often times where I walked on the treadmill for 10 minutes and left because I was just so overwhelmed and anxious, and every negative thought possible about the gym came to my head. But the first step of overcoming and getting over that intimidation is rewiring your mindset. Again, I feel like this podcast episode is really mindset based, but like I said, our minds are our biggest asset, and working on that can really help you overcome a lot of things in life. It has helped me anyway. So essentially, just knowing that people are in the gym for a reason. They have their own insecurities, their own goals that they want to work on, and they go in with a mission of accomplish that rather to be judging and criticizing other people. You are allowed to take space. You are allowed to make mistakes. Nobody starts off in the gym knowing exactly what they're doing. When it was their first time going in, they had to figure it all out as well. And every single person in them got that feeling of intimidation because they thought they don't know what they're doing. But you are on your own path, and over time, you're going to figure this out as well. People aren't there to like criticize your whole session. Even if you think about yourself, like when you walk into a gym, do you spend the whole duration of your session staring at one person and criticizing and judging what they're doing? I doubt it. So you need to apply the same mindset to you. Like if you're not doing it to anyone else, why do you think somebody is doing it to you? Another thing is you need to stop putting spotlight on yourself, right? And then this is not being really like, okay, maybe this is being a bit blunt, but the thing is like most people are way too concerned about themselves to even notice you. And this isn't a bad thing. It's not saying like you're not important, but we often think that people care more about us than we think. So for example, you trip over and fall and you think the whole room is looking at you, whereas probably nobody even noticed. So applying that mindset really helped me actually thinking, okay, I need to stop putting spotlight on myself. People don't actually care about me in that sense. So even if I do something incorrectly, it is fine. Like nobody's gonna remember it. Like we think that the most embarrassing thing that happened to us, also other people thought that it was extremely embarrassing, and like we remember about it for weeks and months, whereas somebody mightn't even paid attention to it. So it's kind of getting out of that mentality that everyone there is looking, judging you. So apart from rewiring your mindset around gym being an intimidating place, there are also some practical tips that might help you get over the gym fear and anxiety. First of all is having a very clear plan on what exactly you need to do. So you know what workout you're doing, what exercises you're doing, the order of the exercises, the sets, the reps. You have everything lined out in front of you. You have read over it. For example, with Transform with MG, we have a coaching app where you have like video demonstrations of every single exercise. So you're able to watch them, know how to do an exercise, and then you're going into the gym with more confidence because you know exactly what you should be doing. You know exactly how your like 1 hour in the gym is going to look like. Second of all, I would ask a staff member for a tour of the gym, show you around where all the equipment is, where like the cardio machines are, where the strength training machines are, where the free weights are, where the stretching area, whatever gym you're in and whatever sections it has. But it might be a good idea for somebody from the gym to walk around with you, show you exactly where everything is. And that also gives you an opportunity to ask that fitness instructor to demonstrate a piece of equipment. For example, if on your program you have a chest press machine, you've never done it before, and the one in the gym looks a little bit different, like the one you watched on the video, you could ask the fitness instructor to just demonstrate it for you. They're not going to have an issue. Like, that is part of their job. Like, they are there to help you out with any queries around the gym that you have. So don't be afraid to ask for help. And third of all, just wear something that you're comfortable in, because when you look good, you also feel good. So just wear something that you're really comfortable in and makes you feel good. And I think applying those three things, along with the mindset shift of gym not actually being an intimidating place and people there are super friendly and always willing to help out, will really help you get over that fear of like signing up, going to the gym and building that gym confidence. Next question: how to stop comparing weight loss journeys? So comparison will always leave you way worse, because you're comparing your reality to someone else's perception of success. And social media is the worst for that, because we're comparing our day-to-day to somebody else's highlight reel. We see a snippet of it, we see their transformation, we see the end result, the success, but we don't see anything behind the scenes, which makes us feel unfulfilled and unsatisfied with our own journey. When you compare your weight loss to somebody else, that erodes your confidence. It makes you unhappy and unsatisfied, and actually makes the whole process of losing weight a lot harder. Why? Because you completely lose sight of why are you doing it, what is your goal, and the habits you need to take in order to get you to that end result. You start to look at what other people are doing and apply that to your lifestyle. But remember, we're all unique, we're all individual, and there is never one size fits all. This is why I'm so against just following like your favorite influencers' workout plans and diets, or like the guides they put together, because it doesn't apply to your circumstances. You need an individual approach to actually see meaningful change. Me saying all that in hindsight is a lot simpler than applying it. So how do you actually stop yourself from comparing your weight loss journey to somebody else's? First of all, just accept where you are and start from the place where you truly are and not where you want to be. So there might be additional steps and extra work that you need to put in based on the position you're at, but that's okay. You just got to take ownership of where you are and have faith and believe in yourself that you're going to get to the end goal, but don't apply somebody else's starting point, because they might be at their chapter 50, whereas you might be at your chapter 1. So it's important to recognize where you are right now. Second of all, get clear on what you want and why you want it and why it's important to you. Don't project what society wants us to look like, what society wants us to be, or somebody else's goal, because it's never going to work for you, and this is where you're going to struggle to achieve it, because it's essentially meaningless to you and your values. Another thing is you need to stop being perfect. Or trying to be perfect, because this is where you're going to start to compare yourself to other people, and you're going to fall into the trap of being like, how is this person so consistent with it? How are they smashing their like 5 gym workouts and never having takeaways, not drinking alcohol, and I can't do that? You just need to take action, and take action consistently. And I talked about habits being relevant to your journey, and you need to focus on them and doing them 80% right. And it's embracing that imperfect action rather than falling into the all or nothing trap. Another thing that really helps with the comparison side of things is understanding your triggers. What actually triggers you to find yourself in the loop of comparing yourself to others? A lot of the time is social media, and it might be the case where you need to sit down and audit who you're following and the accounts that you're exposing yourself to, because If you're following someone who makes you feel worse about yourself, then it's not worth it, okay? Like, there's no need to be following them. You can block them, unmute them, unfollow them if they're a friend and you don't want to seem like an arrogant, I won't say what, but you can literally just mute them. But it's so important who you expose yourself to, and that even applies to people in person. If you're surrounded with a group of friends that are constantly critiquing other people, or them themselves are comparing themselves the whole time to each other or to other people around them, then that's going to rub off on you and you might have to take a step back. So just identify what causes the comparison and the actions that you can take to pull yourself away from that. And if you are going to compare, the only person you should compare yourself to is yourself. Look back at where you were 4 weeks ago, 4 months ago, a year ago, and that brings me to another point: celebrate your wins. If you reward a hard task that you accomplish, you send like a signal to your brain to double down on that the next time an even more difficult task comes into place. And this is when you begin to feel satisfied and fulfilled by your own journey, because you're recognizing that you're becoming a better person. Even if it's 1% improvement week on week, you're reflecting back on who you were and your own journey and how far you've came, rather than, again, comparing, say, your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 50. So yeah, that are a couple of things that could help snap out of that mindset. I know it can be easier said than done. I was there too, and it's really easy to fall into the trap of wanting to be far ahead of where you are, but you are on the right path and you're going to progress at your own pace, and then never mind what anyone else is doing, because you don't know their life circumstances, you don't know their commitments, their values, their goals. They could be completely different, and just because somebody is succeeding in one area of life, does that mean they are also succeeding in other areas of life? Like, maybe they achieved tremendous physical transformation, but how is their mental state? Like, when you're comparing, you also need to think, would I be willing to swap my whole life with that person? A lot of the times you wouldn't be. Like, would you give up your friends and family to be living their life they are? So because we're often like envy of somebody else's one aspect of their life without looking at the overall picture. Next question: how to avoid eating when feeling stressed at work? So there is physical hunger and emotional hunger. Physical hunger comes on gradually, and we get the sense of feeling that we need to refuel our bodies with food in order to function optimally throughout the day, throughout the following day, and so on. And when we're physically hungry, any type of food sounds appealing, to be honest. If you're absolutely starving and you haven't been eating for a few hours, whether somebody offers you a sweet or whether somebody offers you an apple, you're going to eat whatever. On the other hand, emotional hunger comes on instantly, and we feel the need to consume something right away. And often we get this uncontrollable craving for things that give us that dopamine hit. So it's usually like high carb, high sugary, or high salty foods that taste good and comfort us. Think of like pizza, ice cream, bag of crisps, things like that. When we're experiencing emotional hunger, this is what we're craving. So the first step to avoid eating when you're stressed is recognizing when you're experiencing physical hunger and when you're experiencing emotional hunger. So stress is one feeling that causes us to opt for food in order to overcome that feeling, but other things include being sad, angry, bored, lonely. So there's like a variety of things why people would choose to eat that actually has nothing to do with them being physically hungry. So in order to avoid eating when you're stressed would be to give yourself a buffer time and delay your reaction to that emotion. So for example, if you get super stressed, you had like a stressful call with your manager, and your instant reaction would be to go into the kitchen, raid the cupboards, and see what you can pick from them in order to receive that like dopamine hit. So like that feeling of comfort that you get from food. But how to avoid that is actually giving yourself 10 or 15 minutes before you react. And in those 10 or 15 minutes, you could drink a glass of water, you could go for a short walk, you could do some stretching, you could even like run yourself a bubble bath and put on like your favorite episode of Netflix show. So doing something that's not related to food and shifting your mind away from that, and but not completely disregarding the feeling that you want to eat. So essentially telling yourself that like, okay, I'm just gonna have a glass of water right now, or I'm gonna make myself a cup of tea. And if I still want to eat that bar of chocolate, I have the ultimate permission to do so. A lot of the time, that feeling is going to quieten down and you won't have such an urge to binge on a particular food. Again, if it is physical hunger, you're still going to be hungry, like you're still going to get something to eat. But if it was emotional hunger, chances are you just needed a distraction away from feeling stressed, and you could have satisfied that by doing something like a little bit of movement through stretching, walking, even chatting to a friend. So this would be a short-term solution, giving yourself a bit of buffer time before you react to a stressful situation. If emotional eating is something that you experience on a regular basis, it can really quickly become a bad habit and then a lot harder to control, and it will magnify over time. So it's important to take steps right now when it isn't such an issue in order to overcome that. An exercise I like to do with my clients, I did it with myself because I actually struggled with emotional eating for most of my life since I was a teenager and dealing with things going on in school. It was always comforting myself with food. So getting a piece of paper, having 3 columns. In column 1, writing down all the emotions that you feel. So stress, anger, hunger, sadness, and so on. Any emotions that you are feeling. Then in the second middle column, you're going to write what's your immediate reaction anytime you're feeling stressed, anytime you're feeling tired, anytime you're feeling lonely. Then in the last column, you're going to write down what you actually want to do that's going to bring you a better benefit other than eating when you are experiencing those feelings. So for example, you're feeling stressed. Why are you feeling stressed? Because of work situations that come up. Okay, what do you do when you normally feel stressed with work? You go and order yourself a large Domino's pizza and a tub of Ben and Jerry's. Okay, well, what can you do instead when you're feeling stressed from work? I'm going to go out for a 15-minute walk and call one of my best friends who understands me and is a good listener, so I can perhaps vent out to somebody. Or I'm gonna bring my dog to the park because that's something that makes me happy, or another activity that just brings you joy. And do that for every single emotional feeling that you're getting that often leads to like binge eating or eating excessively, and then have that in your toolbox. Take a picture of it, put it somewhere like in your purse. But although you might have not experienced that to a greater extent, it's never a bad idea to just have those tools in your toolbox so you know how to deal with like emotional eating when it comes up at any point of your life. Okay, so all right, let's move on to the next question, and it's essentially just to discuss the topic rather than a question, but procrastinating going to the gym. So I want you to view the gym as something that brings you a better version of you. Oftentimes, we procrastinate because we view the gym as such a chore, something we have to do right now. And in that moment, doing that tasks feels so freaking hard. And we think of all the possible excuses, such as I didn't have a good sleep, it's not going to be a good session, I didn't have proper meals today, and whatnot, every excuse under the sun in order not to do that session. Whereas if we reframe that and be like, doing this session right now, although it feels challenging, in a month's time is what's going to get me the result that I want, whether to be like stronger, fitter, looking good in a bikini, fitting into your favorite jeans again. So always thinking of the outcome that the task itself is going to bring you rather than tasks that you have to do right now. Another thing is using, I think, is it Mel Robbins? I think it's Mel Robbins, the 5 second rule. You're going to count down to 5. And when you get to 0, you're literally just going to get up and go without thinking, because action creates motivation. We often sit there waiting to get that boost of motivation to give us that energy and drive to go and train, but often is actually going to the gym. You're in the gym, you're in a gym environment where everyone else is training. That's already motivating. Second of all, you hop on a treadmill just to get your body warmed up. You move through some dynamic stretches before you get into your workout, and instantly you get that boost of energy. Allow yourself the permission to just leave after your warm up if you don't want to train. And the reason why I'm saying that, because I literally 99% of the times when I just wasn't arsed going, I was like, I'm going to go and walk on the treadmill. If after those 10 minutes of walking on the treadmill, I still don't want to be there, I'm going to leave. It never really happened that I left unless I was absolutely fatigued and wasn't listening to my body and decided to train. And I was like, I genuinely can't put myself through a workout. But it's often, first of all, thinking about the outcome that you're going to achieve from showing up. Second of all, just taking the first step to do it, counting down to 5 and being like, I'm just going to go, leave, giving yourself the permission to leave if you really, really don't want to be there, and you're going to come and return again. But it's about keeping the habit going. And even if you think it's not going to be a great session, just going and showing up and giving your best. And sometimes your best might be 50-60%, other days it might be 100%. It's what you can give in that particular day. But you committing to what you schedule yourself actually builds resilience and discipline. So even if the session wasn't great, even if you only done 2 exercises, it still builds that habit of going and showing up for yourself. And think of the future you, how well you're going to benefit from actually showing up and what results you're going to get further down the line. So stop thinking in the short term and have a little bit of delayed gratification, and think long term what that task is going to bring you, what doing difficult and hard things is actually going to translate to in the future. Okay, we have time for one last question, and then I'm going to wrap up today's podcast, and I will answer, there's a few more which I'll answer in next week's podcast. Right, so last question is how to tone ab muscles. So you're going to build your core muscle through resistant training, like any muscle in your body. By applying force through it, through resistant training, you're going to develop muscle to it. In order to see definition in your abs, so like by toned, I'm guessing like you mean like visible abs, that will come down to how you manage your nutrition. If your body fat percentage is low enough, the strength and the muscle that you have built through training will become visible. If you are holding onto too much body fat, then those ab muscles are not going to be as visible. But what you need to keep in mind is that genetics play a huge factor, because some people just simply don't hold a lot of fat around their midsection, hence why their abs look more defined, whereas you might be somebody that just simply holds a little bit more fat around your abs area, but your legs look more toned and defined, and so does your arms. It all like depends on the genetics, but ultimately the way you build visible abs is, yes, by training them through resistant training, not necessarily direct ab work, unless you really want to focus on them. Of course, like any muscle, the more you train them progressively, the more defined going to be. But you're also training your abs indirectly through doing exercises like squat, bench, deadlifts, because your core is your stabilizing muscle. So in order to execute those exercises correctly, your core is doing the work as well. But then you can also do things like crunches, weighted dead bugs, and like with any other muscle, applying some force on it will help to develop it, rather than consist like doing like 100 crunches or sit-ups on your bedroom floor. But yeah, that's how you develop it. You train it, and then you manage your nutrition, making sure that your body fat percentage is low enough in order for them to be visible. So that finishes and wraps up today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, it would really mean the world to me if you shared it with somebody, shared it on your social media, or recommended it to a friend, family member. If you would like more assistance with your own health and fitness journey, then you can fill out the free application form. Add the link in the show notes, or you can check out my Instagram page at its_Martina Gut, or at its transform with MG, and you'll find the details in the link in my bio. And I shall see you in the next episode.